All right, hi everyone. So today we're going to be taking a look at arrays. So before we get into specifics about arrays, we're just going to talk about problems and data structures and algorithms. All right. And actually, if you want to find out more about arrays, chapter 15 of the Java 8 Fundamentals book has some good detail in there, and you can get that for free on the York University website. Okay, the library there. All right, so problems, data structures, and algorithms. So a well-specified computational problem. So we talk often about computational thinking. So a problem that you want to solve using the computer, basically, precisely describes the desired input and output relationship. So, for instance, an input could be a sequence of numbers. And in this case, we say there's n numbers. So there's up to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way up to the nth number. In this case, number a sub n. Okay, so this, yeah. The output for the thing that you're trying to solve, the program that you're writing, could be the maximum number, we call it max, okay, that'd be some variable, in the input array. So the maximum number in the input array, that's the input right there, such that the maximum value is greater than a sub I, where I is between 1 and n, so it's somewhere in here. Okay, so this is a description of what the output would be with respect to the input. Now, we could have an instance or an example of the problem where we have an array, and in that side of that array, there's the numbers 3, 1, 2, 5, and 4 in that order, starting from left to right. A data structure is a systematic way to store and organize data in order to facilitate access, okay, to get the information out, or modifications, and modifications. Modifications are changing things. Okay, an algorithm, so the description or the definition for an algorithm, is a solution to a well-specified computational problem. So you got to describe or define the problem that you're dealing with, and the solution to that problem is going to be written in the algorithm that you create to solve it. It is a sequence of computational steps, so calculation kind of steps, that calculations taken by the computer, that takes values as input and produces values as output. And what those inputs are and what those outputs are very much dependent on the situation, the context you find yourself in. The steps in an algorithm manipulate well-chosen data structures. Okay, so now we're talking about data structures. What's a data structure? So an array is an example of a data structure. An array is a linear sequence of elements. Now, in the previous course where we used MATLAB, this was basically an array, but it's also what we would refer to as a vector. Okay, so a vector is a simple kind of array. In this case, it's an array that's in a line, a horizontal one, that starts over here and ends up over here. And there are 10 elements in the array. And when we talk about a linear sequence, it means that we have very simple steps to go from one to the next. So a jump of 1, a jump of 2, a jump of 3, a jump of 4, a jump of 5. So these are the addresses for each one of the numbers, okay? And we can ask for the value number 4, value number 8 in here. And by giving that address, we can find the value inside of that particular location. So it's a linear sequence of elements. The types of elements in an array are the same. So basically what we're talking about is that if you have, in this case right here, an integer, 940, or a whole number, okay, every other number in here, or every other piece of data in here has to be an integer as well. Everything has to be the same. If it's a character, then they all have to be characters. If it's a floating point number, they all have to be floating point numbers. Okay, so in this case, it's an array of type int. Okay, so that's the type right there. And then these square brackets that are found right beside it basically represent or tell the compiler or tell you that this is an array, not just a single number, a simple single number, but a group of numbers, okay, a collection of numbers. You can also have an array of doubles, so double floating point numbers, okay, and so you write it something like that. You could have an array of characters, that's single letters or that sort of thing, and it would be char with the square brackets. An array of strings, so string with the square brackets. And the weird thing about this is that string has a capital S. Can't forget that. It's the only one that seems to, okay? So Capital S for string, everything else is lowercase. Boolean, so true, false values. Boolean with a lowercase b with those square brackets that you see at the very end. Okay. Each element in an array is associated with an index. So I talked about indices, or an index here. Index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, etc. Okay, and it's important to point out that in Java, like many other similar programming languages, the first index is always 0. Okay, so we start our count at 0. The range of valid indices for an array is constrained by the size. And the size is both the length and any other dimension that there are in the array. Okay. The first element in an array has an index of 0. The second, so this is the second one right here. The second one has an index of 1, etc. So the ith index element has an index of I minus 1. So the sixth element in here, okay, this is the first element. That's the second element. That's the third element. That's the fourth. That's the fifth. That's the sixth element. The sixth element has an index value of 5. Okay, so I minus 1. The last element in an array has the index value that is equal to the size of the array minus 1, which follows from the previous point. Okay, so initialization and indexing. So to initialize a new array or new array object with a fixed size, we do this. In this case, it's an array of type string. Okay. Alternatively, we can initialize a new array explicitly with its contents. That's right, I forgot to talk about that. In this case, we actually don't have any proper contents defined. Okay, it's just saving the space for the things that would go inside. In this case, we didn't say what the size was going to be, but we did say that there are going to be 3 items inside of it. Okay, and in this case, the array is called names. It's also called names there. In this case, we're putting space for 10 different strings in there. In this case, we have 3 different strings that are explicitly written. You can access elements in an array through indexing. Okay, so we could, for instance, set up a variable called first, and it would be based on the contents of the 0th element in the names array. We could also try and find the some other value inside of the names array. So for instance, we're looking for the second last value in this case. Okay, so we use the length of the array minus 1, so that'll give us the second last value. So and then from there, Java is really good about telling you if something was outside of the bounds of that particular array. So let's give that a try, okay, shall we? So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to type there we go. J shell, like that. All right, so we're in the Java shell right now. I'm going to go string. We're going to make an array of string type. Names is equal to new string, and I'm going to have 10 elements inside of it. I hit enter, and we can see that there are 10 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of value null. Okay, so they're not initialized to a particular value of the string. We could also do it like this. We could say, so we're doing an array of string type. We're going to call it names, and we're going to say is equal to Alan. Let's see, Mark. And let's try something. Xiaoping. How about that instead of Tom? All right, so there we go. So we have 3 names. So now our string has, you can see, it has 3 elements in it. Alan, Mark, and Xiaoping. All right, next up. Let's go and let's see if we can define a variable called first. So we go string first is equal to names. We could do 0, but let's get Xiaoping out of there. So let's go, let me see if I do 3 like that, because we want the third element, right? Whoops. What was that out of bounds exception I was talking about? It's right there. It's not 3. Okay, what I have to do is I have to say 2, because we have a total of 3 elements in there, but we start our index at 0, so the last one is 2, like that. Okay. We could go for the second last value. So that, let's see, that would be string second is equal to names, names.length. So that'll get me the total number of values in the array, -1, so the second last one, go like that, and that should be, let's see, that should be mark. Nope. Oh, look at that. No, so I was wrong. Let me just try, let's try this out. Hold on. Right, see, I made that mistake as well. Because we're doing counting from 0, it's not the second last value. Okay, to get the last value in there, it's actually -1. To get the second last value, I have to go -2 like that. And there I get mark. So that's the second last value. So I made that mistake. It's easy when you switch from programming and say, languages that start their index at 1, and that it's easy to get mixed up between the two. So it's often good for you to test, just like I just did right there. Okay. And then from there, let me see. Right. We can take a look at what would happen if we were to access these names inside of a for loop or a while loop. Okay, so let's print out all the values inside. Okay, so if I go inside of JShell, I go for int I is equal to 0, I less than names.length, and then I is equal to I plus 1. So similar to what you see in the for loop there, I'm just putting I plus plus becoming I is equal to I plus 1. Open the parenthesis right there, enter, so next line, system.out.print line names I like that. Close the curly brace right there, and this should print out every value that's inside of the list of names. Alan, Mark, and Xiaoping. And this is done exactly the same way with the while loop. It's just set up differently to have an explicit counter in there. So there you go. Okay, so please don't make the mistake that I made. And when you're trying to do the indexing, it's you have to make sure to remember that we have an index that starts at 0, not at 1, which is a really, well, I made the mistake, a really common mistake to make. Okay, take care, everyone.